This is the Change Physician, episode 131. Welcome back to the Change Physician podcast. I'm Melissa Cady, the Challenge Doctor, with my co-host, the Amazeballs. Oh, sorry, that's for him to say. Dr. Kevin
You're Amazeballs. Yeah, I'm not Amazeballs.
And you know what? When you threw that Amazeballs in, it was novel. It was something new. So today we're going to speak about maybe why novelty can be important and is important for the human being in life and can bring a lot of gratification and joy in your life, and especially in relationships. I think it's easy to be novel with what you want to do when you want to do it all the time. Not everyone takes advantage of that and can lead to other mental states, but I think it's easy to be novel when you're single. But when you're in a relationship, you have to be intentional about creating novelty if you don't already have it built into your life. So I think this is an important topic to discuss, Kevin, because people can get in funks. Relationships can get in funks. You can do the same work every single day and not really have any change up. You see it in people's professional lives where they do the same thing over and over and over and over and over and over again, and it's driving them crazy and they need a change. So what are your thoughts about it?
Well, it can definitely lead to a funk.
Depression, there's all kinds of extent of it.
But it's interesting because you can't, it's like everything, right? There's this balancing act with it. Mm-hmm. Because what the brain loves and what humans tend to love is stability. Mm-hmm. And novelty. So if we're all doing novelty all the time and your life is completely uncertain, most people actually wouldn't do really well, right? There's a level of stability that we need in order for our brains to then perceive a sense of safety associated with it. What our brains are really, really good though, at noticing change. And it's kind of interesting when you look at like uncertainty and decision making and the uncertainty of something occurring. Depending on where you kind of look at literature, some people will say, well, uncertainty makes things worse. Like if you get a diagnosis and someone says, well, we don't know what this is, it could be cancer. There's a lot of uncertainty there. Mm-hmm. So now you amplify a negative experience. Oftentimes people have an onset of more pain associated with that, et cetera, because there's a lot of uncertainty and danger. So you kind of almost think, well, maybe uncertainty is bad. But we flip that around and go, well, what about birthday presents? Do you like them that you know what you're getting, or do you like them that you can open the wrapping on? And so what we find is what uncertainty does is actually an amplifier of the experience. So uncertainty in a negative situation amplifies a negative experience. Uncertainty in a positive experience tends to amplify a positive experience. Now, what that becomes important long-term is we get this thing habituation, and people will often talk about the hedonic treadmill, where when you've bought or done something new, that no longer becomes new if you're doing it over and over and over again, right? Newness is not something that you do every day. Yeah. And so when we add novelty in, some sort of change, when we add a little bit of uncertainty in there, we're actually heightening that experience. So we can, for things that are pleasurable or things that you want, or a relationship that you want to build, you want to build in these periods of uncertainty, i.e. newness, and do it in such a way though that it's associated with positive things rather than negative things. Does that sort of make sense? Because if you can add a lot of novelty in, but it could do it in the wrong way, in which case that new novelty may not be the best for the relationship living or whatever.
Yeah, I really like the way that you framed this on a few levels, but some of the examples I think of that people can relate to is, you have the new car is not going to be a new car in 5 years, even if it's running great. Like some people just want to change up, like they're sick of the same old car, and it may not, that a car thing may not bother anyone. They could keep it 15 years, doesn't bother them, but maybe it's their wardrobe, or maybe it's their home that it's just getting drab and they need to change up. But then people in relationships go seek out other people for other pleasures, and it creates an excitement, and it gives them that novelty. Not recommending that for relationships that are supposed to be one other partner. Not everyone believes in that, but I'm just saying that is definitely something that happens out there. And there's a lot of reasons, but I think I like the idea of the amplifier part that you said, because it's so true. There's so much that you know, I mean, I like traveling to, you know, places nearby and stuff, but trying a new place you've never traveled to before, the excitement of that, or maybe somewhere far away like Australia, New Zealand, there's an excitement there and something novel that you don't experience every day in your own home, which makes you wonder, if you moved there and stayed there all the time, would you enjoy it quite the same? You know? Yeah.
It doesn't mean you wouldn't enjoy it. It would change.
It wouldn't be new anymore if you stayed there.
The novelty would be gone.
That's right. So the shifts and suddenly you're paying attention, you know, because something's changing. And like you said, it can amplify in a positive or negative direction. So no, I think it's great.
It's really interesting because the brain is so good at what was the statement I read? Because you just fell into this. I don't think you knew this, but the book was my favorite faves the other day, and I've been rereading again, Stumbling on Happiness. A lot of this is about perspective, right? And not perspective, perception, and how the brain kind of relates to novelty, is in one entire chapter on it. And what the brain has evolved to do is it doesn't necessarily, it's not really good at estimating absolute magnitudes of things. But what it's really, really good at doing is estimating changes from what was. Yeah. So it's really good at picking out differences. Like that's what our whole perception is based on. So temperature differences, and they've kind of alternated. And we know this because of the pain world, right? You can change thresholds, like these nociceptive thresholds and nociceptive.
I was just thinking about that. I was about to say it.
It is. It changes. It changes quite a bit.
It's always picking up information, but it doesn't really give you that, oh, this has changed a lot.
Changed a lot. And then we start moving into things like peak end rule, where how a painful experience is measured, not by the total amount of time that you have been experiencing pain, but your peak level of pain and the end of that pain. And then it takes that to actually optimize and say what that experience is. And there's actually data that shows that people actually will voluntarily commit to a longer overall period of being in pain if the peak and the end are not as severe as in another scenario, because that's what the brain kind of looks at, these not magnitude, but looks at these changes in threshold as compared to anything else. And when it comes to novelty, it's doing the same thing. So, you know, I guess a lot of the stuff we're talking about is not specific in any one thing. You know, I think if you guys are listening out here, though, one of the difference between us and a lot of podcasts is a lot of people are just speaking on one focus. They're talking about money, or they're talking about marriage, or they're talking about, I don't know, whatever else that people are talking about. But these are core principles, like novelty and understanding how your brain distinguishes and uses uncertainty is also, like you said, with relationships. So why is it that people, after a year or two, go out and seek another person? Mm-hmm. Well, it's because there is a novelty associated with that, but they don't understand that there is a pleasure with certainty as well. Mm-hmm. You know, the reasons that you pick someone, all those negative things, I can't remember where I read this one, but you know, all the things that drive you crazy 3 years into a relationship are all the same reasons that you pick the person in the first place. Right? They're so spontaneous, and they are just so you know, whatever, when on the first date, and then like 3 or 4 years later, like, oh my God, I can't believe they just changed their mind again, or they just want to do this right now, and why do they want to do all this stuff all the time? So but then the question is, well, how do you then balance this need for stability and certainty that oftentimes can be kind of this perceived as boredom, mm-hmm. and this need for newness, in a way that we know that if we continue to chase that newness all the time, we get habituated to it, and ultimately it's gone. It's like it's a path that you can never meet. It's a taste that you can never fulfill. It's if you're always chasing the new, there's no satisfaction in it, because there's always going to be something new associated with it. But we need it. We need that novelty.
Yeah, that's interesting, because I think of, you know, there's a healthy pursuit of tasks or projects or the outlet for creativity, and you know, when you do it to the extent that you're not tending to the other parts of your life, or relationships, or I could speak from personal experience. Like I can remember still from middle school being the person that gets I'm so driven. And I didn't think of myself this way. I just was driven. I was just being me. I didn't know what was driving any of it, but I was so driven that I would tunnel myself in a way to not know what's going on in the world around me. And to this day, thank God I have a husband that recognizes that and tries to help me with that. And neither one of us are perfect, but this is the part that I am not the best at, because I literally will tunnel vision into some new creative project that's novel because it's a new project, but I'm very driven to get it done, to get the satisfaction of achieving it, and to see the outcome, which I don't always sit there and really enjoy or really, congratulate and really, cherish that. I immediately jump to the next thing to create that same pursuit of novelty. And so there's having an awareness, as we always talk about in this podcast, is, I think, critical. But there's definitely I think a lot of people, something in their life, they pursue, maybe without an awareness, that they're doing certain things. Hopefully me describing this kind of helps people realize or recognize maybe some things in their life that whether they're healthy or not, maybe they can decide if this is something that they need to kind of reel in or modify, or continue to engage in, because you're doing it in a healthy way. But I know I went off on a tangent there.
Well, I think the key thing is the healthy part, right?
Yeah.
If you're using novelty to escape from something,
yeah,
rather than novelty as a way to amplify a positive experience, that's very different.
Yeah.
Because if you're buying whatever, I mean, again, the spending thing is, if you're buying something every day, that's really kind of useless, because you get that immediate sort of surge associated with it, because you bought it and now you have it, and then it's there and then it's gone. That kind of need to see, well, why is that behavior there? Like, what is it that you're finding? What is that behavior fulfilling, right? There's a need that behavior is filling. And maybe it's a need for you're scared of change, or maybe you're scared of settling, or maybe you're scared of not having enough. And so you're having to resent it all the time. But the addition of novelty in that scenario is not what we would call constructive in any way.
Yeah.
On the other hand, if you are kind of stuck in a rut and you're not exactly sure, novelty can amplify it. So your relationships, if you're doing the same thing over and over and over again, that's where they bring in the concepts of date nights, where they bring in the concept of doing something new, making sure that you're addressing those new events as something positive, right? And then it becomes a kind of a game of structuring. So we're looking at change, there's new, and then there's choice, right? And both of those will fulfill that novelty urge. Like if you are in a restaurant and there's a bunch of different dishes, well, now you have all these different dishes that you can try. Like I think of a Chinese buffet or not a Chinese buffet, but if you go for a Chinese dinner, like a banquet, Chinese banquet, they bring in like literally 12 or 13 different plates on the thing. And now you're all on a table and you have your little lazy Susan that you're rolling around to each other with, but there's this huge variety, right? And it's super, super exciting. On the other hand, though, there could be your favorite meal. And with your favorite meal, what you want to do is then you have sequential, and you separate that by space. So if there's a specific, I don't even know how to say this, as a specific thing that you can plan, and I guess I'm moving into the relationship thing here, but if there's a specific something that you can do where you're planning that date night, right? And you're saying every 3 weeks or every month, we're going to do this thing. You're incorporating novelty there. And you don't need as much variety anymore because you have that novel event, this thing.
Right.
So it's almost looking at, okay, well, if we want to increase novelty, we can increase it. And by planning things ahead maybe we're looking at a 4-week or 6-week time frame for big things. Like you don't want to fly to Australia every 2 weeks. That would probably get old really fast. But if you're doing it once a year, every 2 years or whatever, you're planning that out for that big novel experience. And then on a day-to-day thing that we can do is just add from some variety of what you're doing. So, maybe that would be is doing every week. Maybe you're, I don't know, cooking dinner together or something that has some variety of a mixed mass experience.
Yeah. It sounds like a non-official psychological consultation for me. My marriage. No, I'm just kidding. No, we all can use a little novelty from time to time if it's constructive.
Well, I've been married 20 years. So,
there has been some novelty.
There is, and there's rough roads. This is definitely more important to me than my wife. I will tell you without a doubt. But one of the things that we did in the middle of the pandemic, and I'm like, we have to do something. We're all trapped in this house. We have to do something, me and you.
Yeah.
And so I'm like, let's just get a hotel room. I don't even care where it was. It literally was in the same town the first night we did it, because she's like, oh, the kids. I'm like, yeah, they're old. They're 16 and they were 16 and 15 at the time. Now they're 17 and 15. But I'm like, oh, we're, not a big deal. But then, and then this actually tied into way back. Holy crap. Like 8 months ago, I was talking about my whole platinum journey with Marriott.
Yes.
So I tied this in to one, if we can get these stays in, so we can, get platinum or renew our platinum, do whatever. But the other part that is really cool is, for me, again, I don't think the newness is as important for her, but I'm like, hey, if I'm booking the hotel room and we're doing it every 4 to 6 weeks, it adds a layer of novelty that for me is really cool. I really enjoy it. And she's at least tolerant and willing to put up with it for me. But anyway, you schedule in advance, and that's one of the joys is if you can kind of do this pre-planned novelty of something new.
Anticipation.
Is there anticipation? We should do a whole thing about, actually, if we talk about travel or something like that, there's a whole, there's ways, if you have my brain doesn't like immediate change. Like I'm not a spur of the moment guy. It's something I've always struggled with. Every time I do something spur of the moment, I almost always enjoy it. It's just kind of crossing that hurdle. But if you're not a spur of the moment person and you're watching this, one of the things that planning is a really awesome way, like scheduling the stuff out, because it pushes you. You're anticipating it. Then you have this whole pre-period of anticipation, which provides another sense of novelty to it because you're exploring it. Then you have the event itself, which is a whole novel scenario. And then there's the reminiscent that goes with it, which was an overall positive experience. And now you have these fond memories. So we're playing in all those 3 time perspectives and kind of building up around this idea of novelty and change and uncertainty in a positive way.
Absolutely. No, I think that's the essence of what we're trying to get across, is just this novelty. There's a lot of psychological benefits to this creation, whether it's immediate or it's planned, having novel experiences. And we just hope that, everyone out there is building some positive ones into their life. But I don't have anything else to say on the topic, but if you want to kind of take us out and finish this up, sounds good.
I can take us out. I just want to add on the danger side is just recognizing that they're just like everything. Novelty is a tool. If you're seeking out someone new and you need a new spouse every 2 years or 3 years or 4 years, the problem's not with them, it's with you. And that's something that needs to address, because as we've talked about, that's probably the number one financial issue. Anything is who you marry. Other than that, novelty is a tool. Being aware and intentional about how you use it can provide you wonderful returns. And I guess we're the Change Physician Podcast. I'm Dr. Kevin Cuccaro with my Amazeballs co-host, Dr. Melissa Cady. As always, if you're a physician or physician ally, you can join us at thechangephysician.com. Love your reviews on whatever your venue, whether it's YouTube or iTunes. And if you have some suggestions for us, let us know at drkevin@thechangephysician.com. And until next time, stay well.
Take care.